to the Lamed Vav Amud Beis, and the last sugya that we learned was a discussion of how many distinctions the Mishnah at the beginning of our parak makes in between Dinei Mammon and Dinei Nefashos. And the Gemara wants to assert that there are 10 differences, yet when you analyze them carefully, there's only 9. The Gemara says, what do you mean there's only 9? If you count them one by one, there's actually 10. So the Gemara says, true, but 2 of the halachas, 2 of the distinctions between Dinei Mamonis and Dinei Nefashos really stem from the same place, so they're really one and the same. They're 2 symptoms of the same difference, and that is that we treat the Bezdin of 23 like a mini Sanhedrin, and therefore they have all the halachas of a Sanhedrin. That's why they have to have 23, and that's why a mamzer is puzzle. They're both the same halacha. So therefore, if you want to have a 10th one, the Gemara quotes a 10th nafkamina. The Gemara quotes a 10th nafkamina, which is whether or not a zakein, a sris, or mishain leibanim, or an achzari, whether they are allowed to paskin for dinei nefashos. And the answer is they're not, because they don't understand how a person survives. They don't understand the difficulties of raising children, and therefore they can't appreciate what this accused is going through, and therefore they cannot judge him. However, by a mesis, where we want to purposely be brutal with him, all of these people would be kosher to paskin for a mesis. Which takes us to the next Gemara of Hakoil Ksherin, Lotan Dinei Mammon. Zok Gemara, Hakoil is always an inclusive language. What type of person would be allowed to paskin on Dinei Mammon that we wouldn't have obviously known? Even a mamzer can paskin on Dinei Mammon. There's another brisa, there's another mishnah that already teaches us this halacha, because there's another mishnah that says royu lotin dinei nefashos, royu lotin dinei mamonis, but v'yesh royu lotin dinei mamonis, v'ein royu lotin dinei nefashos, v'avinam ba, and over there the Gemara asked what distinction is the mishnah referring to, who would be kosher to paskin on dinei mamonis, yet not for dinei nefashos, lasuyemai, so that's another mishnah already gave us a remez that a mamzer is kosher for dinei mamonos and not for dinei nefashos. So Gemara, we have 2 mishnayos, chada lasuye ger, chada lasuye mamzer. Out of these 2 mishnayos, one of them is to tell us that a ger can paskin on dinei mamonos, and one is to tell us that a mamzer could. Utzricha, the yashmin and ger, if we only knew that a ger could paskin on dinei mamonos, the royal lovely bekal, a ger could marry a Jewish woman. Maybe that's why he can paskin for dinei mamonos. Aval mamzer, a maloi, but a mamzer who cannot marry a Jewish woman, maybe he would not be able to paskin on dinei mamonos. So you need a chiddush of a mishnah, the hakoil, to tell us that. Yashmin mamzer, if we only had a mishnah to tell us that a mamzer can paskin on dinei mamonos, that's the bami tipuk shera. At the end of the day, the mamzer was created from a Jewish tipo zera. A ger who's created from a type of a goy, you might think that he couldn't paskin for a case of dinei mamonos. Shricha, that's why the Mishnah had to tell us we need 2 mishnayos, lasuye, one lasuye ger, one lasuye mamzer. My time, or why not? Why is psulim in yichus not authorized to paskin dinei nefashos? The Tani Rabbi Yosef Kshim Shebez and Menukin B'Tzedek, just like they have to be squeaky clean in their righteousness, Kach Menukin Mikol Mum, they have to be squeaky clean in any mum of yichus. But physical blemishes, physical problems do not disqualify a dayan. Amar Meir Micro, where do you see that a dayan has to be pure of yichus blemishes? Because the pasuk in Shir Shirim tells us Kulach, referring to Knesset Yisroel, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is referring to Knesset Yisroel, Yafa Ra'isi, you're all beautiful, Umum Ein Bach. So my whole flock is pure and beautiful, and there's no mum. Break the Gemara, how do you see from Umum Ein Bach that it means a yichus mum? Maybe it means a physical mum, the dilma mum mamish, but a yichus mum is not a problem. Omer of Achabar Yaakov Omer Kra, V'siatzu sham imcha. This is referring to what HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe Rabbeinu to get 70 Ziknei Ha'am. They would stand there with you, and we learned several times in the Masechta. Imcha b'daimin lach. Because Baruch Hu was telling Moshe, get people, Zikanim, that I could put my Shechina upon, that are similar to you, meaning they're also flawless in their yichus as you are. Maybe that was a very special selection, because there HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically put his Ashrosh Shechina on those Canaan. Maybe that's where they have to have pure yichus. But just for a regular dying, even for a din in the fashers, how do you know that they need to have pure and unblemished yichus? This pasuk is when Yisroel told Moshe to select Dayanim, to create a bureaucracy of Dayanim. It says, they'll carry it with you. They have to be like you, meaning having unblemished, having pure yichus. There was no special Ashrosh Shechina. It was just sitting up at Eidinim. So you have a raya that in order to be eligible to be a dayan, one must not have mumen in yichus. I wonder if you also have a raya. I mean, Moshe did have a blemish; he couldn't speak properly. I'm not sure if that's mamish considered a mum, but it was clear by comparing them to Moshe that a physical mum couldn't have been a problem because Moshe had a physical mum. Although the Gemara says beferish, maybe meaning
I think he was healed. He was healed by then. Everyone was, according to the Medrash, everybody was healed at Har Sinai.
Oh, so after Kabbal's heard.
Yeah.
Okay. Zog to Gemara weiter. Even after the Ma'aseh Egel, they didn't go back?
Oh, it seems, I don't know.
Okay. Zog to Gemara weiter. Sanhedrin, Hoysa, Kechati, Goyer, Nagula. The setup in Vezin was the Dayanim sat in a semicircle. Kedei sheyehu royin zeh. So each dayan could see each other. When you're having a conversation with somebody, merely hearing audio doesn't compare to actually seeing the person's face and his expressions as he speaks. That also conveys part of the message. My Rashiva Revelia Zatzal once said over that Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, before he would say shir, he would actually practice shir in a mirror, because he wanted not only his words to be exact, but he wanted the expressions of his face as he's giving over the shir to be precise as well. And that's very much part of an argument, is a person's facial expressions. That's why they have to see each other. So why can't it be a complete circle? Anyone could see each other. So Rashi, because then you're going to have certain people, half the bezin are only going to see the back of the baladin and the back of the Edom. And that's not good either, because everybody has to see everybody else face to face. In addition to the Dayanim, and we're talking about 72 Dayanim, they were sitting in a semicircle. There were two stenographers in front of them. Echad miyamin, one was on the right, v'echad mismal, and one was on the left. The Kaisvin divrei hamazakin v'divrei mechayvin, the Tzionim changed the gears around. And the B'yudayim Shloisha, there was actually three stenographers. Echad Kaisv divrei hamazakin, v'echad Kaisv divrei mechayvin, v'ashlishi Kaisv divrei hamazakin v'divrei hamechayvin. And Rashi explains, Rabbi Yehuda didn't want everyone to have to write everything, because there's too much to write. They might not be able to capture everything accurately. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda said, we'll have one stenographer that's just going to focus on recording the Divrei HaMazakin. The other stenographer will focus only on the Divrei HaMechayvin. But we do need a second transcript to corroborate, just in case there's some lack of clarity. So therefore, the third cipher, he will write both, but at least we have a second copy, a second transcript of every argument l'choiv and every argument l'schus that we could corroborate or clarify if one of the two transcripts are not clear. And then they had the backups. And it seems like these three rows were not in a semicircle. They were sitting straight across. There were three rows. And in the total, there were 48 people. So Rashi says, called Echas, Kiminyan Sanhedrin Esher Mishloisha. So 23 times 3 is actually, 23 times 3 is 60, it's 69. But what Rashi Shim Yicholku Achav Gimel, if the 23 would be split in half, Reuben Mechayev Umi Uton Mezakin. If we want to Pascal Mechayev Einal Piechad, you can't do it with one. You need a majority of two, and therefore V'tzorich Lahoysev Shnayim Al Achivim Vechot. I'm making a mistake. I'm talking about a Sanhedrin of 23, not of 71. The Sanhedrin of 23 sat in a semicircle. But if they only had one dying majority to condemn, we need to add two at a time until we reach a point where there's a majority of two condemning or a majority of one exonerating. Therefore, Zokrashi Hilchach Tzarech L'Hoishev L'Fneim Arboim Ushmoina La Shlomash Shivim V'Echad. They need 48 because 23 plus 48 is 71. And that's the maximum amount of people that would be on the Bezdin should they have the need to add to. They would make the rows of the Talmidim were 24. So each row was 24 because it's one more than 23, which is what the row of Dayanim were. They didn't make small rows. And they didn't either have two rows of 23 and then add one extra row of two. Of these shalosh shuras, they made three rows. Okay. So it sounds like there were three rows. There was three rows, and Rashi says of Chavdalit. So they had really more than they needed. Maybe there's a spectators gallery. It wasn't just open seating and you sat wherever you want. Everybody was lined up on those three rows from the top best Talmud, that would be the first replacement that would be offered up to the Bez, and should there be a need to replace one of the Dayanim, down to the guy at the back. Everyone sat in a specific order in a specific place. What if they needed to add a Dayan? One of the Dayanim wasn't feeling well, he died, or he couldn't continue the case. So Soimchin min harishayna, they would take the person in the highest position of the first row. He would be the one who would actually move up to the Bezdin. Now you would get somebody from the Besmedrish to fill that place, but he wouldn't go fill that empty seat, that vacated seat, because that vacated seat is reserved exclusively for the highest of the Talmidim, who's going to be in the first position to replace a Dayan. So therefore, Echad min hashniya baloi l'rishoyna, someone from the second row would now fill the vacant spot in the first row, and Echad min hashlishis baloi l'shniya, and someone from the third row will fill the vacancy in the second row. And Bayril Lahan Oid Echad min hakahal, they would find another Talmud who's up and coming, u'moishiva noisa b'shlishis, and he would fill the seat that now is vacant in the third row. You don't sit in the exact position that was vacated because everybody moves up. If you move from the second row to the first row, you're not going to just fill the opening in the first row. Rather, everybody in the first row reshuffles so that the next in line moves to the first seat, and so on and so forth. And you're going to get the last seat on the first row. So it's possible that you could be in the most prestigious position of the second row, and then you could end up in the lowest position of the first row. How do we know that the Bezdin has to sit in a semicircular fashion? Your leaders are in a goblet of soyar which is round. Al yechser hamozaik, the proper dilution rate shouldn't be missing. And this is how we darshan. Surarech zu Sanhedrin. Surarech is referring to the Sanhedrin. Lama nikra shema Surarech. Why is the Sanhedrin referred to by the Rebbeinu Shalom as Surarech? Shehi yosheves b'tibur shalolim. Surarech means the belly. So your belly is what the pasuk says. Kigan hasoyar is like a round goblet of fine wine. Why do we consider the bezin like the belly? Because the bezin sits in the Beis Hamikdash, which is the center of the universe. Agan. Why do we repair to an agan? Shehi megina al kala ilam kulay. Because Sanhedrin is protecting the world. And hasoyar is shehi doime l'soyar. It's similar to hasoyar, meaning that it's round. Soyar is the Aramaic word for the moon, which is round. Al yechzer mosek, that we should never lose the right concentration, like in wine, where you would dilute it 2 parts water to 1 part wine. If for some personal reason one of the dayanim had to leave, we always make sure that they'll at least be 1/3 of a full Sanhedrin. We know a full Sanhedrin is 71. 23 is 1/3 of that. Therefore, we always want to make sure that there'll be at least 23, which is very interesting because that opens our eyes to a whole new Yosy. That 23 is really the core of what a bezin of 71 is, because we learn from these psukim that even a bezin of 71 can continue paskening as long as they have a minimum of 23. So really 23 is the minimum, which explains why it is that every bezin of nefashis has to have a minimum of 23, because that's really what the core of even a 71 bezin is. And that's why we just learned in our Mishnah that all of the rules that apply to the Sanhedrin of 71, like they have to be doimet to Moshe Rabbeinu and not have any type of mum in their yichus, that applies as well to the bezin of 23, because that's what they are. They're the core of a bezin of 71. And therefore, if people have to leave from the bezin of 71, royin im yesham esher mishloisha keneget and hedrik tana, if they're still remaining in the lishkas hagazus, in the Beis Hamikdash, in the right place of the Sanhedrin, a minimum of 23 dayanim, which is 1/3, which is mosaic, which is the dilution rate of wine to water, Yosy, then this dayan can leave as long as he's leaving 23 remaining. From lav eino Yosy. And remember, we had a discussion: why is a dayan allowed to leave? Is it just for any reason? So we had a discussion that if the whole Sanhedrin is never allowed to leave unless they're going for a mitzvah such as Egla Rufa or to adjust the borders of Yerushalayim. The pasuk continues: Bitnech, your belly, a remas chitin, is like a bundle of wheat. Ma remas chitin, just like a bundle of wheat. Hakoil nahanin mimena. Everyone enjoys it. They eat it. It smells beautiful. Af Sanhedrin hakoil nahanin mitamein. Everybody benefits from the chachmas haTorah that emanates from this Sanhedrin. And then the pasuk ends: Suga b'shoishanim, the gate protecting it is merely a small rose bush, not a very impenetrable barrier, hardly a good enough barrier to put up between America and Mexico. Why is that? That even if the border together is a small little bush, nevertheless, lo yifrutz abehem pirtzos. So that mark, that small little bush, is enough to awaken in us to stay away from what we're not supposed to go near. We don't need a big stone steel fence, because Klal Yisroel is beautiful, and Klal Yisroel just needs a little bit of a warning, and we'll stay away from Averis. And this explains the story of a conversation between a min and Rav Kahana. A min, there are those who say, means mitalmidav shel yeshe hanoitri. Amrisu, you said, nida shari liyichudi v'hade gavra. The husband is allowed to be miyachid with his wife Anida. We know you're allowed to. So the min asked, Efsher eish bin huras, the enema have heves. Can you have a spark, a little fire in cotton? It's not going to go up in smokes. It's going to go into a big fire, as we see in LA. So how could you allow a husband to be miyachid with his wife who's Anida? It's inevitable that he's not going to be able to control himself, and not good things are going to happen. Amar Lei, Rav Huna says no. Rav Kahana said no. HaTorah ha'ida aleinu. The Torah saying Edus and Klal Yisrael, we're not going, we're eating. Suga b'shoshanim. Shafilu kisuga b'shoshanim lo yirfutzu ben pirtzos. Even if all we have is a small little barrier, we're not going to be nichshel. Rishlokish Omar mehocha. We know this from a different pasuk. It says kapelach harimoin rakosech. Like the beautiful round shape of a rimoin is our profile, our face. Afilu reikanin shabach. Even the people of you that are empty, Malayan mitzvahs karimoin, are full of mitzvahs like a rimoin. Our worst Yidden are still wonderful. Reb Zeir Amar mehacha Yitzchak Avinu smelled v'yorech esreach begadov al triki begadov el aboidov. The Maharsha says something very beautiful over here. It says even though we have Averis, we're see, Pelach Harim Rakosech is someone who doesn't have mitzvahs. But even if we have Averis, Hashem loves us. Why? Because the Reich Begadov were the Begadim of Nimrod that Esav had, that Esav did Averis with. So even though they're full of Averis, but nevertheless, they still smell good to the Rebbeinu Shalom. A Yid is Erlich, even a Yid who has a lot of Averis. Rabbi Rosner said over a story that I never heard with the Bluzhever Rebbe in the concentration camps. The Nazis would dafka torture the Yidden, and what they would do is on Yom Kippur, they would bring in the most delicious food to dafka to torture the Yidden, because they knew that the Yidden couldn't eat on Yom Kippur, so they dafka brought nice food in on Yom Kippur. And there was a capo there who would brutally beat his fellow Yidden. And when they brought in the food, of course, nobody ate. And the Nazis told the capo, forced him to eat, beat him up. And he said, no, I can't do that. It's Yom Kippur today. No matter what I do, they won't eat it anyway. And the Nazis told him, if you don't beat them up and force them to eat, we'll kill you. And he said, I'm sorry. If that's what you need to do, that's what you need to do. But I will not do that. And they killed him. And the Bluzher Rebbe said, on this Yid, Kepelach Hariman Rakosech, Afilu Rekonin Shabach, Malay and Mitzvahs Karimon, even someone who would brutally beat Yidden, he himself had Gedorim that he wouldn't cross. That's the beauty of Yiddishkeit. Everyone knows the similar story by Churban Bayis. They wanted him to go and take Caleb out, and he refused to. Zok to go more weiter. Hani Beryuni, there were these tough people. The Hava B'Shevavusei Reb Zera. They lived in the environs of Reb Zera. Now Reb Zera was a short man, and he once wanted to see if the Eishel Gehenim will be shaylet on him. And he went into a fire, and his thighs got burnt. So he was known as the short guy with burnt thighs. So there are these Brionim, these tough people that were living around Reb Zera. He would be Makarb them, and which seemed inappropriate. You're being Makarb these bad people. You should only allow people who you want to be with in your environs. Why would you allow these people who could only tarnish your reputation? But why did he do it? If they would be exposed to him and he would hang around with them, maybe he would be able to influence them to do tshuva. But the Kapti Rabbanan, the Rabbanan were not happy with it. Why are you letting these people live amongst you? When Reb Zera passed away at the end, Omri, these Brionim said, Ada idna have a chadicha katan shakei dava boy alon rachmi. Until now, the shorty with the burnt thighs, meaning referring to Reb Zera, he would daven for us. He would protect us. But he's not around anymore. So we're in trouble. Hashman boy alon rachmi. Who's going to daven for us? Here are who bilibayu. So they decided, you know what? We got to take care of ourselves. We're going to have to do tshuva of the tshuva. So Reb Zera was right at the end. By offering them this closeness and this protection, yes, it gave them confidence and security. But when Reb Zera was nifter, it prompted them to be chayzer b'tshuva. Shalosh shuros. Amar Rabbi Shemamina naidu kulu ki naidu kulu naidu. When even one person moves, everybody moves because everybody's moving up one position. V'lema lahu. So let the people who are going from the top position of the second row into the lowest position of the first row, until now we were sitting in the top of our row. Now you're putting us in the lowest position. You're giving us a downgrade. It's humiliating. Amar Abaye, the Amrulay will tell them the following: the lowest position in the highest row is still an upgrade from the highest position in the lowest row. Zok to more weiter. Ketad ma'aymin esa'id. The Mishnah tells us, how do we put the fear of God into the Edom, as Rashi says, Shaloyo Idu Edu Sheker, to make sure that they're going to say only the truth. Now the stakes are higher. We're not talking about Din Mominus like we discussed until now. Now we're talking about Din Nefashis. Zok to Gemara. Al Edin Nefashis, they would take him into chambers. Uma'ayim in alayim, and they would scare them. Shemra Taimu Me'umad. Maybe you didn't really see this yourself. Maybe you made an assessment. And by your assessment, you arrived at his testimony, but you didn't actually see the murder. The Gemara is going to give an example of someone who didn't actually see the murder, but made an assessment that a murder must have occurred. Or umishmua, maybe it's hearsay. Aid mi pi aid, umi pi adam. Maybe you think that will be good, and the ches sticks in shamanu. Maybe you say you heard it from a reliable person. That's not good. That's not good. So the Bezin brings to their attention that you have to actually have seen this yourself. Or Shema I atem yoidin shasayfenu lived like eschem b'drisha v'chakira. You might not realize that you need to be really sure about what you're about to tell us, because we're not just going to take your statement. We're going to be darish v'chayker, and you're going to look awfully stupid if we tear you to shreds. So unless you're really clear about what you've seen, maybe withhold. Habayoidin, you should know that the stakes are much higher in what you're coming to say testimony about. Shaloike dini mominus dini nefashis. Dini mominus, if you're lying or if you're wrong, adam noisin momin mischaperloi. You pay back whatever you caused the guy damage of $10. You give him the $10. But dini nefashis, you can't do that. Damai, his blood, the damzura oisov, and all of the blood of his future descendants who are supposed to come out of him, that now you've chopped off because you said edus that wasn't true, and because of that he was wrongfully convicted. Taluyim boy is on your head at soifa olam. And the Mashal says, money, you pay back the money itself. You don't pay back interest when you pay back money, but by dinim nefashos you pay back interest. Because not only are you held liable for killing this person, you're held liable for the fact that all of his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all of his descendants aren't going to be here. And that interest they will mon from you. Shekain Matinu, we found, and this is all part of what Bezdin tells the Edom. Shekain Matinu, Bekain, Shaharik Esachiv, Kain killed his brother Hebel. Shenemar, what does it say there? Koil Demei Achicha Tzayakim. The bloods, in plural, of your brother are crying to me, Hashem said, from the ground. Who are we referring to? Damai, the Dam Zar Oisav. So you see, the stakes are very high. Dover Acher, and this is all part of what we were telling him. There's another pshat called Me'achicha. The Me'achicha, Shahaya Damai Mushlach ala Eitzim Valavonim. He was stabbed multiple times. Cain didn't know how to kill somebody, so he was just stabbing and stabbing him. And Hevel's blood was all over the place. Lefichach nivra adam yichidi. You know why a person was created by himself? Why was Adam Arishon created as one person on his own? Lelamdecha, to teach you. Lelamdecha, to teach you. Shekol ha'abed nefesh achas mi Yisroel. Anybody who destroys one nefesh in Klal Yisrael, ma'ila olav akosov ki ilu ivoid olam molei, as if he destroyed an entire world. And somebody who saves Klal Yisrael, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of the Second World War, the prisoners that were in Schindler's factory made him a ring. They forged him a ring out of silver that had this pasuk on it. Another reason why Nivra Adam Yichidi is so that one person shouldn't be able to think he's greater than the next, because we all share the same grandfather. I come from more choshavichas than you. My father is greater than your father. Because everyone could say, you know what? But we all stem from the same grandfather. There's many, if there would have been multiple men created at the same time, the people could have said that there's multiple Rishuyos and they each made a man. But there's only one man made because only a Kadosh Baruch Hu made him. In a Malchus, if you're going to mint with the same form multiple coins, they'll all be identical. Kulon doimin zelazeh. But Melech Machem, Melech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who he minted the human, Tava Kaladim B'chayis Moshaladam Arishon, yet each person has their own uniqueness, their own individuality. V'nechad men doim l'chaverei. Lefichach, therefore, Kol Echad Ve'echad Chayiv, everybody must say, Loimar to say, V'shvili Nivra Olam. And Rashi says, Koloimer Choshev Anik Olam Olay. A person has to have pride in who he is. He's a world unto himself. And therefore, Lo Etrid is Atzarim in Olam B'Aveir Achas. I'm not going to ruin myself over an Aveira. V'yimshach Mimena. Then I'll pull back from doing any Aveiras when he realizes the uniqueness and the importance of each person. V'Shem Tamru. And what if you're going to say, Tuning on Tamabeis, Malonu Lotzar Azois? The Edom are going to say, yes, we have whatever we need, and we know we're informed properly. But you know what? If it's such a big deal, why do I need it for? You know what? I won't be an aid. I'm out of here. And now we're not going to have an aid. They won't have that option. They are obliged to come and say testimony. They couldn't back out. Even if he's guilty, why do we need to want to bring about his demise? Let someone else do it. We don't, why would we want any blood on our hands? I don't want to get involved. Don't think it's a bad thing. It's a good thing. By eliminating evil from the world, you're actually doing a good thing. So to come about it, Ketzad me'umad. What does it mean that they cannot say eidos if it's circumstantial evidence that they saw, they didn't actually see the murder? I'm going to tell them, Shema kach re'isim. Is it possible that you didn't actually see the murder happening, but you saw the following scenario? Sherotz echad bechaverei, or sherotz achar chaverei. Somebody's running after his friend, l'chorva, into a ruin, so you don't see what's going on inside, but you see one person with his knife drawn running after another person. V'rotz tamacharav, you ran after them, and by the time you got there, the deed was done. Umatzosam sayif biyodoi v'domai metaftuf. You see the guy who was pursuing, who was chasing, he has a knife that's dripping with blood in his hand. The harag mefarfer, and you see the victim bleeding to death. So you didn't actually see the murder, but you saw circumstantial to conclude that this fellow was definitely a murderer. In kach re'isem, loy re'isem. If you saw that, then you didn't see enough to say edus to convict. Tanya Amar Abshim ben Shetach, Arab in Nechama. I should see Nechama. It's a lashon of promising, because Arab in Nechama means I should need Nechama, meaning Chas v'Sholom, I should suffer a tragedy that I should require Nechama. If I didn't see exactly this scenario where someone was pursuing his friend to a churva, exactly the scenario we described. I told him, Russia, me hargal is that. There's only two people that could possibly have killed this victim. Oyani, either me, Oyato. But guess what? I know it wasn't me. But what could I do? I didn't see it, so I can't say edus, and you're going to get away with it. I have no right to kill you, nor to say testimony against you. So what did Rav Shimon say? But I know you're a murderer. So he said, a person who murdered his friend, Bezdin can't do it with Amisa with the Adam. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take care of you. Amru. The story goes, the legend has it, as Leizazu Misham, they didn't leave that scenario, that scene, at Shabbat Nachash v'Kisha Yumeis. This murderer was bitten by a Nachash and he died, which would represent Midas Sreifa. Freit the Gemara b'Haibar Nachashu. Is a murderer supposed to get Misa Sreifa, to be burnt up by the poison of a snake? Of course not. He's supposed to get herek. From the day that the Beis Hamikdash was Choreb, and therefore Bezdin can't pass it anymore. Even though there's no more Sanhedrin, Arba Misas loy batlu. There's still Arba Misas. We still do Arba Misas Bezdin. What do you mean? Without Sanhedrin, we can't possibly do Arba Misos. Loy Botlu, Va Botlu, you just said it was Botlu. Elo Din Arba Misos Loy Botlu. It means, even though we can't give Mises Bezdin, but it doesn't mean the perpetrators aren't going to receive their proper punishment. If someone was Chayv Skila, Shem makes it that he should fall off roof, or he'll be ripped apart by a chaya. So clearly, a nachash machisai is shreifa. Either we'll begin up with the machas who killed him by chopping his head off, or listen by no love. And if he was chayv chenek, he'll either drown, or meis b'shrinchi, which is an affliction in his throat that causes him not to be able to breathe. So how is it that this perpetrator got killed with a nachash? So Gemara, Amri, Hahi, Chet, Achriti, Havabay. This murderer did other affairs that were Mechayvim Mises Shreifa. The Amamar, Mishan is Chayv, Shtei Mises Bezdin, Nidim Bechamura, he can't kill somebody twice, so he gets the more severe Misa, and that's why he was bitten by a snake. Tosfos talks about the historical facts that even after the Sanhedrin wasn't in the Lishkas Hagazos, even though there was no Beis Hamikdash, they still had a Sanhedrin. So Tosfos talks about the different historical facts. Chaim Tzimor told me a story about a person who, because we're talking about a Kadosh Baruch who brings the proper Misa on somebody, even though there is no Bezdin to enact Mrs. Bezdin. So there was a person who did a terrible Aveira, and he did tshuva for the Aveira, and he told Rebbeinu Shalom, if I ever do such an Aveira again, I'm makabel on myself that I should drown. So it doesn't take too long. Everyone is resolved, and they start being nishul in the same Aveira again. And he was nishul in the same Aveira again. So now he knew he was in trouble because he's going to drown. So you know what he did? At all costs, he avoided going into water. He didn't take ships, he didn't take boats, he didn't go over water, he didn't go swimming, and he was trying to avoid it. One day, for some reason, he had no choice. He had to travel by ship. He had to go to a business meeting, and he was on the ship, and in the middle of the ocean, this big storm came, and this ship was going to sink. And he told the Rebbeinu Shalom, yes, I know I'm entitled to this Misa. I told you if I'm over again, you should drown me. But just because I did an Aveira, why do all the other 500 passengers on the ship have to suffer along with me? Why should they die because of one Aveira? And the Baskal comes up from Shemayim and says, Yankel, do you know how long it took me to get all 500 of you onto one ship at the same time? Zok Gemara weiter. From merely, you cannot testify from an assessment. Zok Gemara bedinin nefashos hu d'laim dinan. Sounds like we only warn him about not using circumstantial evidence for dinim nefashos. We didn't give him this same warning by dinim mominus. So it must be a bedinim mominus amdina. It means by dinim mominus, it's acceptable testimony. Even if I didn't actually see it alone, but I just have circumstantial evidence, come on. This is consistent with Rabacha, who said that by mominus, you can say, you can offer circumstantial. The Tanya Rabacha Omer, Gomel ha'oicher bein ha'gmalim. So one shot is it's a gomel that's in heat and they get very wild and they can hurt other animals. The nimtza gomel horeg b'tzidoi. And you find a dead camel on the floor near this animal. The Yedush is a harga. We know for sure that this camel is the one that killed the other camel. So that's circumstantial because you didn't know and actually witnessed the animal kill the other animal. So you see that circumstantial is good for the demominus. You're making a deal from the fact that the Mishnah only offers up this intimidation by dinin nefashos and not in the mominus. It's a right that dinin mominus doesn't require it. But what about ADP8? The katani b'dinin nefashos hu d'lo amrina. Our Mishnah only talks about it by dinin nefashos. Are you going to make the same diak? How b'dinin mominus amrinon? But nan we know ADP8 doesn't work even by dinin mominus. Imamar hu amar li shani chayav loy. Or ish ploini amarli shu chayiv loy yamar klum at sheyoymar befanenu hoideloy in front of us the loiva was moided to the malva shu chayiv l'mesayim zuz and he said atimedai. There's a Gemara Alma you see from here Alvagav the psila b'dina mominus, even though this is something that even by dina mominus would be a disqualifying factor of ADP8. Amrina lu b'dina nefashos. We only warned the Adam about it when we're in a case of dina nefashos. So hakadami. So when it comes to circumstantial, maybe you shouldn't be able to make the diak. Alvagav the pasta b'dina mominus amrina lu b'dina nefashos. So you can't bring a right from the fact that the Mishnah only presents it now when you're in a case of dina nefashos, because that doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't apply to dina mominus as well. Have yoidim. Am Rabbi Yehuda Bared Rab Chia Melamed she'asa Kain behevel ochiv chaburos pitzios. The Mishnah says you should know that it says kol demei achicha because the blood was everywhere. Kain wanted to kill Hevel, but he didn't know how to do it, so he kept on stabbing, and Hevel kept on living until he reached the neck of Hevel, and that's what killed him. The moment the earth covered up the blood of Hevel, because Cain wanted the earth to totally conceal, should be totally absorbed in the ground, it should be totally concealed, so it would conceal his crime. When the earth did that, concealed the blood, so the blood wasn't on the surface, it was absorbed into the ground, and because that it sort of assisted in his accessory to murder after the fact, because of that, to do a good thing, the earth was punished that it won't open up its mouth to do a good thing. Shenemar Miknafa Oretz, from the Knafa Oretz, Zmirosh Shamanu. We heard beautiful Zmiris, Tzvi Tzadik. Now this is talking about the Asad Lavoi from the Tsaris of the Golos. Eventually, you can hear Zmirosh Shamanu, Tzvi Tzadik. The Tzadik is going to be in a recognized with the proper covet, but we learn that Miknaf Oretz Vilay Mipia Oretz. It's coming from behind the earth, but not from the earth opening its mouth up. In other words, it's going to have to be slipped out from behind, but not that the earth will open up and give out its mirrors. Toysa says, very interesting, Kasul b'tshuvas ha'go'inim she'ein b'nei Eretz Yisroel oimrim kedusha ela b'Shabbos. In Eretz Yisroel, you only say kedusha on Shabbos. We don't pass on that. We say kedusha every day in Eretz Yisroel. But there was the Tshuvas HaGoyim says you don't say kedusha on Shabbos. Tachsiv kabechayis sheish knafayim l'echad or knaf oimer shira achas b'yoyim. So therefore, if there's only 6 wings, it's b'sheish shemechol l'chshagiyah Shabbos oimer machayis l'fnei hamokoyim. The chayis told the Rebbeinu Shalom ein lanu oid knaf. We don't have another knaf. Because Baruch Hu meishav lahem yesh li oid knaf, which is the miknaf ha'aretz zemir shemanu. Shoimer l'fanei shira shnemer miknaf ha'aretz. Anyway, so the Gemara says, so it says miknaf v'loy mipiaretz. Esvei Chizkiah. Chizkiah had a question. Who was Chizkiah? He was the brother of Rabbi Yehuda. So Chizkiah and Rabbi Yehuda were the 2 sons of Rabbi Chia, and Chizkiah asked Rabbi Yehuda the following question. Esvei Chizkiah. But tiftach haaretz is pia. By Korach, it says the Eretz opened its mouth to swallow up Korach. Amalei, Rabbi Yehuda said, "L'ra pascha, l'toiv pascha." For Ra, the earth will still open its mouth, but for Toiv, it's miknaf orange, it's for the back. V'amar Rabbi Yehuda v'red Rabbi Chia, Golus mechaperes avoin mechza, or mechza avoin. Golus is mechaper half of the chet, half of the aver. Mekar ksiv by Kain, v'hayisi no v'nod. Now I'm going to have to wander around. U'leb'soiv ksiv v'yeshev eretz noid. So you see that the no he was able to shake. It was only the noise that he has to deal with. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Golus mechaper shloisha dvarim. Golus is mechaper on 3 things. Shenemar hayoshe bir azo is the Navi said whoever stays here and is not going to Golus yamus becherev berav v'dever. The 3 punishments. But vayoyse v'novel l'kastim atzorim aleichem. But if you go run a fight with the kastim, meaning you're doing Golus, you're leaving your home, then you'll leave. So you see, it's mechaper on cherev berav and dever. And he'll be able to have his life saved. Not only on 3 averes, not only on half averes, but it's mechaper on everything. Shenemar kisu es ha'ish hazeh ariri. This person will be ariri, and we're referring over here to the children of I think Yochanan, Kisvus Ish Hazeh Ariri, Gever Lo Yitzchak B'Yamav. None of the children of his children in his times will ever be Matzliach. As Rashi will be Yechanya Melech Yudikset. So the Navi was telling Yechanya, you're never going to have any child in your life that's going to be productive. You're going to be without children. Kelo yitzlach mizaroi ish Yoshev al kisei David umoishel oid b'Yehuda. You will never have a child who will once again sit on the kisei David and rule over Yehuda. But Ubasar the Gala, but after Yechanya was sent in the Galus to Babel by the Nebuchadnezzar, the whole story changed. It says, Uvinei Yechanya, who were the children of Yechanya? Aser Shlosiel, we'll see who Shlosiel was, that's the important one. Benoi Aser, I'm sorry, Yechanya Aser, Uvinei Yechanya Aser Shlosiel Benoi. Aser, where does the word Aser come from? Shibrasa Ima Bevesa Asurin. His mother became pregnant with him in jail while he was in jail because they were in jail because they were put into galus by the Nebuchadnezzar and Shlosiel Sheshasloi Kale. HaKadosh Baruch Hu planted him. What does that mean? Shaloi Kederech HaNishtalin, not the normal way a child is conceived. Why is that? Gemiri, we know a woman cannot become expecting if the bia occurs when she's standing. And the mother of Shlosiel became pregnant when she was standing. And Rashi says that the jail cell was so small, even though his wife was with him, he wasn't able to be nistabuk with her lying down. They had to do it standing up. Rashi also says maybe they lowered his wife in from the top. They were probably in a dungeon for a conjugal visit. But at the end of the day, they weren't even able to have a normal bia. Yet the child was born. HaKadosh Baruch Hu made a nation that this child should be conceived and born. Davacha Shlosiel shenishal al alosai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was shoyal on his promise that Yechanya will never have children because he went into galus. Then it says, who was born? El Zerubbabel shenizra beBavel. Zerubbabel is the same person as Shlosiel, and Zerubbabel was the king who was Nizra beBavel. He was conceived in Babel. Umashmai, what is his name? Who is this famous Zerubbabel the Shlosiel? Nehemiah ben Chakal Yishmai, who in fact did bring Klal Yisroel back there to Israel, and in fact he did end up having some position of leadership. So you see that the curse given to Yechanya was nimchal because of the goals. Yehuda v'Chizkiah b'nei Reb Chiya. Yehuda and Chizkiah were two brothers. They were the children of Reb Chiya. Havayasa b'Sudasa kamei Rebbe. They were sitting at a suda in front of Rebbe. They were not saying anything. They weren't speaking. Amar lahu. So Rebbe wanted to hear what they had to say. So he said, Agru chamar adardiki. Give the kindlach, give them wine. Once people drink, they become a little bit more talkative. Once they drank a little bit, they started to speak. Ein ben David ba. Mashiach's not going to come. Until two batei avos in Klal Yisrael become eliminated. Zog to Gemara, the Elohim, who are the two batei avos we're talking about? Rosh Goylish Bavel, Dinasi in Bavel, which incidentally was Rebbe, which means they're saying something that would be uncomfortable to Rebbe, because they're telling Rebbe, we're not going to have the Mashiach until you're gone. And V'nasi Shaberes Yisrael. Shenemar v'haya lemikdash ule'evin nagaf ule'tzur michshol l'shnei batei Yisrael. Le'evin nagaf means v'haya Mashiach. Rashi v'haya Mashiach that's going to come is going to only come by making two things bad happen quickly. So ulenag oven nagaf memayer hagolush sheminagefes es hareglayim. It's going to be like a stone that you trip over, meaning someone's going to have to die, ulutzur mishko, and a stone, selam a stone that you trip over. So those are the two things that are going to happen, l'shnei bat Yisrael. So basically, the Mashiach coming quickly is also going to hasten the fall of the Rosh Goyla Shabbavel and the Nashi Shabbat Yisrael. Amalahan. So Rebbe told him, you're saying something that's offensive to me. Banai, koitim atem matil nibeina. You're putting thorns in my eyes. Amalei Reb Chiya. So Reb Chiya, their father, came to their defense and says, Rebbe, what do you want? Al yer beinecha. You shouldn't be upset by what they're saying. Because yayin nitein b'shivim oisiyos. The gematria of yayin is 70. Nun is 50. And the 2 years are 10 and 10. V'soid nitein b'shivim oisiyos. And the word soid is also gematria 70. Because samach is 60. And vav and dalet, 6 and 4 is 10. So therefore, you see from here that nichnas yain yotza soid. You gave them mine. What do you expect Oh, what did you expect to hear from them? Obviously, the truth. I'm going to make a push to the 2 dots because I want to get a blot ahead because I'm not going to be able to say shir on Monday. Dorish Mori Barmar, Mori Barmar Darshan. Hashem was diligent to bring the bad on Klal Yisrael. And he brought it. You know why? Why is Hashem diligent to bring bad upon us? Ki tzaddik Hashem alekeinu. Correct the Gemara. Mishum the tzaddik Hashem. About Hashem the tzaddik. That would make him a yishkoid Hashem ala ra v'yavi aleinu. That would encourage the Rebbeinu Shalom to bring bad to Klal Yisrael faster. Zok the in yes, because tzedakah asa kadosh baruch hu im Yisroel shehiktim golus tzidkiyo. Golus tzidkiyo came before it was supposed to. It started early. You know why? Because it was a chesed at the end, and we're going to see in a minute why. The oid golus Yechanya kayemes. The golus tzidkiyo was supposed to be after the golus of Yechanya, but they happened concurrently. The chesed begolus Yechanya hacheresh v'miskar elef. Cheresh v'miskar are the Pashat Pshat, it means the skilled craftsman. But we learn it means the Talmid Chachamim. Kivin Shapoischen Cheresh. Where did the name Cheresh come from? That it refers to Talmid Chachamim. Kivin Shapoischen, the moment they open up, Hakoel Nasu Kecheresh, everyone becomes quiet and deaf because after they say something, that's the Maskana. Miskars, Kivin Shasoigim Balacha, once they pass on Halacha, Shuvein Poischen. No need to open it up again, they clarify everything. The Kama, how many people were there? Elef. There were 1,000 people, 1,000 Talmidei Chachamim went into Golus with Yechanya. Ula Amar shehiktim shtei shonim livnei shantem. The Klal Yisrael was supposed to be in Eretz Yisrael of V'nei Shamtem ba'aretz. V'nei Shamtem is gematria 890, and they were supposed to be in Eretz Yisrael for 890 years. But it says after 890 that when you'll be in a Shamtam Da'aretz and you'll do a Averis, Abe to Abdun Maher. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't want them to suffer the Abe to Abdun. So instead of letting them stay in Eretz Yisrael for 890 years, you only let them stay in Eretz Yisrael 888 years. So therefore, they left. They were thrown into Golus earlier, which means they didn't have to have the Hishamet Hishamedin Ki Abit Abdun Maher Hishamet Hishamedin by not waiting the full V'nashantem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu didn't have to put the full Abit Abdun upon them. Amar Rav Acha Bar Yaakov Shma Mina Mehera Demari Alma. What does it mean fast in the Rebbeinu Shalom's eyes? Tamni Meya V'chamshin V'tartnaven. It's 852. You see that the Meyer of the Rebbeinu Shalom is 852. Why? The Hu Gematria Divinashantem. That is the Gematria of Vinashantem. The Karle Abu to Abdun Meyer. So you're going to be quickly destroyed after Vinashantem. Dama the Shtei Shanim Tzedakah. So Vinashantam is gematria. I'm sorry, I made a mistake with my numbers. It's the gematria of Vinashantam is 852. Okay, so we will stop here. Right, it's 852, and Klal Yisrael was thrown out of Eretz Yisrael after 850 years, not 890. That was a mistake. So 852 years is the Vinashantam. They were thrown out of Eretz Yisrael after 850 years, which is 2 years early. But when the Rebbeinu Shalom said Abed Abdul Maher after the Vinashantem, it means that 852 years is what's considered Maher in the Rebbeinu Shalom's calendar. Okay, we'll stop here, Be'ez Hashem, and tomorrow we will continue on Daf Lamed Ches.
Yosy,
Yes. Yes.
when you how did the gematria of Yayin